Hey, you! Today I'm going to talk about design for success. I was born to be a winner. I don't know about you, but when we are talking about winners and winning, let's look into it. Resilience is a human nature. Human resists about change. When there is something going to change, human resist that change. And preserving through adversity is not a bug in our software, but the future of the hardware. Persevering is a quality that we all should have. We have to continue. We have to go ahead. So I maybe you have heard it before, but hear it again. If you want to hear it again. Maybe you have heard it. Close the door to the past and go ahead. Go ahead. Because that's what matters. The future is what matters. So you see everywhere that when they talk about, they say Black Lives Matter, Child Matter, and all this. So I have another things that matters, and it matters so much. Your future matters. And if you don't close the door to the past, you have no future because you are living in the past. So your future matters. And unless you don't close to the past, there's no future for you. Are you feeling vulnerable? I bet you are. If so, you are certainly not alone. I feel vulnerable too. One thing the current coronavirus pandemic has done is to heighten our sense of vulnerability. When something like coronavirus gets all the people of the earth, it's globally pandemic. There is a warning sign. Boo, 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 boo. There is an alarm. You see, when you going to the building and something happened, an alarm sound, that's a warning. Coronavirus is a warning to you all. You guys, corona is a virus that should be a warning for all of you. Because you see that humans are so weak. So if you hold your nose, you're gonna die. So don't try it. It's done with professional. Professional do this like me. Don't do it at home because you're gonna die. Suddenly, we are too aware of how fragile human is. We become insecure about our job, our health, our institution, our churches, everything. I was watching a video. I'm not sure it's right or wrong. That's on social media. That in next 2 years, 2 million people going to die. I don't know. That was a warning. And sometimes we have to pay attention to the warning. Pandemic has forced us to contemplate difficult and scary eventualities. Right? In lockdown, we had we had to adapt our lifestyle to the lockdown. But when reopening happened, phase one and phase two and phase three. So in phase three, that we are in phase three, and this Friday, gym will be open. So when opening happening, so we have to adjust our lifestyle. Again, we come back to normal. We come back to the original. We come back to original. When reopening happen, we are going back to the original version. Okay, so when we go to the original version, then you have to adapt yourself because you didn't use certain things during the lockdown. You have to get used to it when going back to the original. The brain sometimes send negative pulse, but you have to fight negative thoughts. Fight it until you win. I was born to win. And there is a battle mind here in the mind. And if you fail to conquer your negative thoughts, you're gonna lose. If you fail to notice the creeping heresy, you're gonna lose. You have to be aware of all creeping false teaching. You have to be aware of false heresy. Heresy. That's how it is. You have to be aware of your surrounding. You have to be aware of heresies. In a dangerous environment, only the vigilant survive. And while technological and medical advances have made our modern environment safer, but unfortunately, we've been going ahead with technology. Technology improve and we are going ahead with technology. But unfortunately, our brain have retained the old wiring. Unfortunately, we have to update our mind as well. You cannot move forward with the technology, but stay and stuck with old wiring with your mind. That's mostly the problem of old generation. If you are old generation, then you have to update your old wiring. Even without coronavirus, you have to update. There is no need to get a shock with something like coronavirus that you have to update. You have to renew. Even Word of God said that renew your mind. Renew your mind. Word of God said renew your mind. You cannot stuck to the past. If you heard something, you cannot stick to that information. You have to update that information. Hear it again with the new information and replace it with false information from the past. To be sure, such feelings are not without justification. If you are feeling related to the past, there is no justification with that feeling. And Yes, our vulnerability doesn't tell the whole story. In fact, psychological research over the last few decades has shown convincingly that our fault mode under adverse condition is not vulnerability but resilience. So maybe you think you are vulnerable, just you think, but you are not vulnerable. You are resisting. Sometimes you are resisting. You are not vulnerable. That's so much different between these two. The term resilience refers to the experience of undergoing adversity without suffering debilitating effect. The psychologists Anne Mastern and Norman Garmsey, pioneers in the study of resilience, defined it as the process of capacity for or outcome of successful adaptation despite challenging or threatening circumstance. When you are threatened, do you remember David? Do you remember David? His life was in danger. That's why he ran. So if your life is in danger, some we are get used to it nowadays. Everybody is in danger, no matter what social class are you, rich or poor. Everybody is in danger of coronavirus. If your life is in danger, then you have to do something about it. Pioneers in the study of resilience define it as the process of capacity for outcome of successful adaptation. You have to adapt with the new environment. I remember there was a war. I remember there was a war in Iran between Iran and Iraq. And when the alarm goes off, that means that red situation happened. And everybody should go and shelter themselves. They have to go out of the home and they went to shelter. Sometimes you have to leave your home and go to the shelter. That's a red situation. And you have to adapt your living with new situation. But when the red and the radio said, oh, the rain is over and it go back to white situation. It goes back to original. So the red is danger. And when you go to white, that's original. And you can live your everyday life again. So we need to go back to original and get rid of coronavirus. That is, they are human, designed to succeed and are difficult to disrupt. I can relate to so much. I don't know about you guys. I don't know about others. But I'm not easily distracted. I'm not easily distracted. And I'm not easily stopped. You can try. You can try and try to stop me. You can try and cut me off. You can try and try to keep me away from what I want. You can try to silence me, but I'm not easily silenced. I cannot keep my quiet because I have to tell the truth all the time. You cannot keep me silent. And sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. Physiological and psychological research has demonstrated repeatedly that human tendency toward resilience is so much. For example, for example, when you ban something, when you say you shouldn't do that, people are 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 eager. People eager to do that things that is forbidden. That is resilience. That is rebellious. So if you have tendency toward resilience and rebellious, so it's natural. It's natural. It's in human nature. Everybody is rebellious. Someone is has someone has hidden rebellious. Someone have the obvious rebellious. Normally we call it rebellion. So teenagers all the time are rebellion. They fight. Teenagers fight. That's so common between uh, teenagers that they have to fight. I agree with them. You cannot, you cannot stop teenagers to be a rebellion. Because when I was in film school, actually, it's a good thing. What I'm saying is a very good thing. When I was in film school and I was studying acting, and we had credit for script writing and production, our teacher told us that learn all you can. Learn from the past, learn from your teacher, but after, break the rule. Actually, that's a good thing. That's a good thing that you break the rule. You have to learn from the past generation and you have to break the rule. So sometimes being rebellion is very good thing. Don't be ashamed of yourself if you are fighting against norm of the society. Don't be ashamed of yourself if you are fighting the old generation. If you are fighting against old men, don't be ashamed of yourself. The researchers found that most of those exposed directly or indirectly to the collective trauma were not severely traumatized, instead exhibiting remarkable resilience. Another post a study tracked a sample of over 2,700 New Yorkers for 6 months following the attack, observing resilience. When 9/11 happened in New York, I'm not I don't want to discuss roots of 9/11. That's the whole story. But when after 9/11, people had hard time to go back to the original situation. So in New York, people who live in New York had a hard time going back to original after 9/11. It was very hard to go back to original situation after 9/11. First, we are continuously bombarded with bad news that activate our negativity bias and inflame our anxieties. When you are watching TV, and I'm telling you, believe me, I'm telling you, when you are watching TV, you are bombarded with negative thoughts. Even professional in a TV ministry tell you think negative. It's obvious. Sometimes TV work like a spy. They bombard you with negative information, but you don't realize that you are bombarded by negative situation. But sometimes it's obvious. They claim to be professional. They came on TV and tell you, oh, and think negative. That's ridiculous. But anyway, when you are watching TV, you are bombarded with negative thoughts and it comes to your mind. Then it creates anxiety. If you think you are anxious, some people are anxious. And what the cause of anxious thought? TV cause anxious thought. So stop watching TV and you can get rid of those anxious thoughts and you can get rid of anxiety. And stop watching TV. It's a waste of time, especially Christian TV ministry. Watching those is a waste of time. When you are on a TV and you think, oh, I am prosperous because I have TV ministry, I have a studio for myself. You think that what I'm doing is not changing life. What I'm doing is because TV ministries, Christian TV ministry, instead of changing lives, they are creating anxiety. Okay, so plane crashes will always make the news. So when plane crashes, if there is a child, an adult in the airplane, both of them die. Nobody saved. If you are sitting beside the child, both of them die. Remember that. Both of you dies. But people are afraid of flying again. We may fail to appreciate the truth of our resilience because we are prone to commit a kind of cognitive error known as propositional fallacy. We do this when we assume, for example, that the fact that most prisoners are criminals. We say, oh, that person that's in prison is a criminal. It's not always that. Even if they are charged with something that related to crime, it doesn't mean that they actually did it. There is so many people innocent in the prison. Believe me. And Iran, I know they're changing. But in Iran, so many people in prison because they couldn't pay. They didn't have enough money. They are not criminal. They don't have enough money. They are in prison in Iran. Fortunately, they are changing. I guess they are changing to the law about the check. So nobody in prison is a criminal. In fact, most children from dysfunctional home become someone who disgrace to the society, to the community. Because fathers didn't raise them up well. When I say resilience, what comes to your mind? My guess is that you have conjured up the image of a strong, hardy individual. No. Resilience is not always being strong. Maybe you are resilient, but you're not strong. You just want some changes. Sometimes something people have more or less of this. Indeed, several individual characteristics have been shown to predict resilience outcome. For example, high intelligence is one such individual predictor. Someone like um, a genius like me. I'm a genius. Believe me, I'm a genius. I have a struggle against heresy in the church. And personally, I am such kind of person. Because personality always play a role. People who score high, I took every kind of test and I score high. Because I know who I am. I know what are my spiritual gifts. I know what are my talents. So every kind of test that I take, every step that I take, I know. I know where I'm going. I know my direction. Again, the connection is quite intuitive. Intuitive. Sorry about that. Human beings are social animals. We survive in the community. But when community is dysfunctional, then you don't have anything to do with the society and you are isolated yourself from the society and community. Sometimes you don't need community. You just need a quiet place like me to write books. You have to get yourself a distance from community to write your books. In other words, refers to one's mental agility and adaptability, just as physical flexibility denotes physical health, so does psychological flexibility denote mental health. You need to have a mental health to be strong. In other words, psychological hardiness denotes the ability to assess a stressor accurately, face them intentionally, and act on them with courage and purpose. So, if you want to do it, if you want to tell somebody just do it, you have to have a strong mind. You have to healthy mind to just do it. So you can tell a lot of things, blah 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 blah, but you have to show what is the steps to achieve the things that you want to do it. You have to have a courage and purpose. You have to have a strong mind. Transforming potential calamity into opportunity. Research suggests that hardiness may also operate via biological pathway. In sum, let me conclude talking of today. Individual characteristics matter to resilience. Unfortunately, human psychology, being what it is complicated. Of course, human psychology is so complicated. The full story is richer and more interesting than that. I tell you something. Psychologists tell you something. But the story behind all that is more complicated. This is because no individual exists without context. Everyone has a context. When you see something, when you see success, when you see failure, maybe you just see that success, maybe you just see that failure, but there is a success. There is a context behind that. There is always behind the scene. There is always behind the scene. Maybe you see something, but there is always context. You have to search, you have research, you have to know context. So, and that is my talking today. On the whole, research suggests that contexts have a lot to say. Contextual risk and protective factors predict resilience better than individual threat. So sometimes when you want to talk to somebody, when you are going to a community, you have to know the context of that community. I was talking about it so many times because every community has a different language. When you're going to a community, you have to know the language of community, unless you don't understand. So if you want to understand, just understand the language of community. So you don't need to search through the Google Translate, because sometimes you cannot translate with Google Translate. Google Translate maybe translate some human language, but not all of them. Because nowadays, especially nowadays, some community talk with a language that nobody can interpret that. Just they follow the trend blindly. Somebody do something and everybody else go and do it. That becomes a trend. You cannot interpret. It's a game. Let me finish with this. There is a game that there is a circle of people. Somebody says something as a whisper to another person. And it goes around until it comes to original person. And it becomes totally different things. So it's community like this. To live in a community is like this. There is an original version of something and everybody do something. But when they do that things, it's slightly different from the original version. And when it comes back to the original person that said, it's totally different things. It happens in every community. It happens in Christianity in church. There was an original version of Christianity when Jesus Christ teach disciples and people. It goes forward. After a few centuries, we are in 21st century. The Christianity today is totally different from original version. So it's going that way. And it's going to these things that in community, language change. And when you see crime in the community, you have to know that the root of crime belongs to parent. Father and mother cause the crime in the community and in the society. Peace of God be with you all.